All right, MA Marignon turned 76. We continue forward with our plans for our throne rush. Maybe should be accelerating them. Bringing in a variety of our summons, cloud trapezing in a few of our mages to try to cover our failure on top of Xibalba's capital. We actually managed to mind control a Wraith Lord from Shiniyama, so I think that's worth the gems to bring him over to our side and actually make him into a commander. We're wasting a bunch of fire gems, turning into a bunch of gold, so it's a decent result. Definitely can use 4,900 gold, so I'm content. We still have enough fire gems to do all the fire gem related things we want. There's a report from Nabab, because of course there is. Yeah, so this army gets hit with leprosy. That's not too much of a surprise. A lot of these fellows are already lepers. So not the end of the world. One other thing I forgot to mention last turn, we are bringing in a Golem, and we're doing a bunch of forging of gear. We're going to try to get our Horror Harmonica Golem back online, mostly to counter AI Falegra, who I am expecting to move out, most likely against us, since we border them almost completely. Asphodel has one province that borders them, but, it's pretty likely that the AI is going to be attacking us. And it's kind of questionable whether or not we can stop them, so we'll see. We also have a couple of Mind Hunts. Yeah, this did cross my mind. It's a little sad to be losing a hero, though, honestly, it's at this point especially, it's not really that relevant. But Asphodel has responded to our Mind Hunt efforts by moving in a stealthy Astral Mage, and so when there's an Astral Mage in the same province, this is what happens when you try to Mind Hunt them. I knew that this player certainly was aware of this interaction. Asphodel does not get any Astral Mages to my knowledge, and definitely doesn't get any stealthy Astral Mages, but of course we are on turn 76, so all nations are able to do a lot of stuff they can't normally do. So we'll probably curtail a lot of our mind hunting against Asphodel. We'll have to figure out a different way to get rid of that assassin. Although it's not strictly necessary that we get rid of one assassin, we're going to lose a few mages. We also tried to get rid of the commander of another one. I think this was one of the Centaur raiding groups, but unfortunately they resisted the spell, as often happens with mind hunts. And then we have our magic phase attack, our lesser horrors that are coming in against one of Eryu's forts. We got a pretty bad roll here, only 2 brass claws, but this is the reason that we're casting it against this fort. We had a scout on top of here, and we saw that there's not really much in the way of province defense, so brass claw horrors, not the best horrors, I would say, and only 2 of them, not that great. But against minimal province defense, definitely enough. We also then send a scout in or somebody like that to take control of the province. This locks in at least one of the elemental royalties that are out of there. I think it was one of the Kings of Earth that retreated from that army that we beat on the previous turn. So this will hopefully delay the response somewhat from Eryu and, just cause problems for them. And maybe also, this is a fort that's kind of in a different direction than we're actually planning on going, so hopefully keeps Eryu off balance a little bit. Maybe we're aiming more at their capital. We have a little bit of blood hunting going. We've got 3 blood hunting provinces now, although I don't think we have patrollers in this province yet. We're working on it. So our blood economy is not great, and hopefully will not be relevant because we're going to win in a few turns. But just in case it all goes wrong, we are trying to expand that a bit. And of course, Xibalba assassinates. This is probably like a Camazot of ours. Yeah, so this is not going to work out for us. And it's a shame this fellow didn't die in the battle, but, he might have stayed stealthy. So yeah, we're going to continue to lose commanders and mages to this fellow. But it's just, sort of the cost of doing business. And then we have a few assassination attempts. So yeah, we're trying to assassinate elves with water bottles, which, we'll see about this. No bodyguards, at least. And yeah, unfortunately, water elementals, not so great against, lightning. And yeah, it's pretty unlikely now that our assassin, there he goes. So water bottle assassins, not so fantastic against elves. I do feel like it's something that can work. Water elementals do have a lot of attacks, so it's maybe not the best the best option. Yeah, there we go. We got a hit in. Yeah, so it can work. It's only 2 data points, but 50-50. It's probably not very efficient for us. These are recruit anywhere commanders, and they're decently expensive, but 10 water gems for a 50-50 result. It doesn't seem great. But of course, Ariu doesn't know that we only have 2 bottles of water. I do think we forged one more this turn because we were anticipating that we might lose one in this. So it'll certainly at least like give them pause, right? It's like they know that, I mean, we could in theory recruit a ton of assassins, and depending on like what we're spending our water gems on, which we are not spending it, right? I think this is like 40 water gems, so we're definitely not mass producing water bottles. But Ariu doesn't know that, so it just gives them something to think about, another thing to worry about if they're going to jump on top of one of our forts. And then, of course, there's an absolute ton of battles, so we get attacked by Ariu in a couple of locations. This looks closer to like the Agartha front, pretty close to Nazca's old capital. And we don't really have a defense here, though we did invest in province defense, which definitely feels like a mistake in retrospect. Still just the standard kit from Ariu, so no additional fire resistance. I am kind of surprised that they haven't deployed that. I guess Ariu doesn't really have a lot of fire mages, maybe no fire mages. Although at this point, you would expect they have like some independence somewhere that gives them a bit of fire access. And I think there's probably a few water items that'll give fire resistance. I'm not actually sure offhand. It looks like this guy, oh no, he is a thug. But perhaps a thug that was part of an army. Summoning storm power is, an odd thing in a thug script, but against a bunch of deer tribe, it's not really going to matter if the script isn't super efficient. With it that they have. So both of those raids work out for Ariu. But again, the lack of fire resistance does mean that, we should be able to turn those thugs around without too much difficulty. And it does look like Xibalba rides out. So this is going to be risky. So we brought everybody in. We have these guys just set on attack rear. Like everyone's going in as fast as possible. We're summoning air elementals in the first turn, right? They're trying to set up a Sabbath. So we're hoping, here comes some polar fires, which are all over the place. There's definitely some risk that we don't have enough super combatant elements, and I think I forgot to set mages to advance and cast spells, which is definitely something we want to do. The lack of chaff to prevent like really dangerous units, not to mention that air elementals are always super scary and a pretty good answer to almost any super combatant that's not size 6, just because of the way trample works. This ends up working out really well for us. And I do think it was definitely the right call to reconstitute on top of Xibalba. We also find a bunch of gear, some of which probably was ours at one point. But that's all right. We'll take it. This is definitely like a good result, and we kind of needed this in this area because we were planning on using this army potentially against Yis to defend one of those thrones if Yis does indeed decide to come in, which like I said, I've been expecting that for 20 turns now. So maybe it's an irrelevant worry, but it doesn't feel irrelevant. And if we had lost this army, right, and Xibalba got free, that's definitely an argument, for Yis to, change their mind about not coming in. So definitely very happy about that result. A lot of respect for the Xibalban player, the sub that came in. They just, the fact that they've survived this long. There's been a number of failed assaults on their capital, and, we have added to that tally. But I think, fingers crossed, at this point, we should be able to take Xibalba. Famous last words. So we have a raid here from Ulm, one of these Iron Angels, probably pretty, really heavily kitted out. A lot of gem expenditure, but it's a dangerous thug, absolutely, and should be able to deal, with this level of province defense. So let's just verify that that's the case. They're able to come away with it, probably without too much trouble. No regeneration, though, I think. Let's just double check on that. And I feel like that's pretty dangerous. I feel like with this level of investment, but no regeneration, I don't know, that makes me nervous. Regeneration is just so useful on like heavy thugs and super combatants. That said, I am certainly no expert at running super combatants or heavy thugs. Right, this is us trying to kick Ariu off of our throne. Wow, there's actually a lot more here than I expected. They must have snuck in, a bunch of mages. We're probably going to lose this, but that's okay, right? Like, we're not risking everything. That's kind of like part of why, we didn't risk everything. And like the plan is to, bring down, gifts from heaven, which are going to be all over the place. But we should hopefully, is everybody lucky? No, we haven't cast it yet. Did I miscalculate, or like maybe we lost some of the mages? Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, he went with Doom instead. So I mean, that's not. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to curse all of these guys, but the Lucky Bugs definitely would have been better. And yeah, I think that this is not going to work out for us nearly as well as I was hoping. But again, like, really, buddy? Like, yeah, Blade Wind? Why is it that when you want them to cast Gifts from Heaven, then they're like, no, that's too dangerous. So yeah, the Eagles are coming in. They're actually not set to come in immediately, which I was a little bit surprised by. But the fact that we're not getting like Lucky Bugs here means that our chaff is going to disappear a lot more rapidly, and that means that our mages are going to be in trouble. And then we have some guys that are not casting Pillar of Fire for some reason. Flame Eruption, yeah, not the worst. I guess Blade Wind actually is decently effective here because there's no King of Earth, so there's no Army of Lead. So I was giving these mages a hard time for using Blade Wind. But it's actually fairly effective against lightly armored targets, and Great Eagles don't actually have a ton of protection if they're not getting buffs. So a lot of mages is always dangerous, and we have given out some bodyguards. There's definitely like quite a few unprotected mages. That looked like a Phoenix Pyre explosion, which is definitely off script. Don't know if that worked out for the mage in question. We have some retreats as well, which is really nice. I'm not sure that we actually bothered cutting retreat routes, but this is pretty deep in our territory. Well, I don't know, pretty deep in our territory, but it is in our territory, and we are making efforts to recapture provinces when possible. So this might be a complete wipe if Eru didn't open up some retreat routes with their raiding, and assuming that we did the appropriate raiding, to close any retreat routes that they had previously opened. So that didn't exactly go to plan, but it did work out for us, so it definitely goes in the win column. Not sure what happened to the communion. Completely possible that I just miscalculated, or that somebody ate a lightning bolt. Yeah, a pretty expensive win for us, honestly. Like this, if we didn't cut the retreat routes, man, I really hope we cut the retreat routes. But yeah, if all these mages managed to retreat, this was definitely a lot more expensive for us, right? Losing the 6 shamans. The 2 initiates is fine, like 2 throne mages. This isn't like awful mage losses for this point in the game. We do wipe out 21 Great Eagles, which is pretty significant. But this was definitely a kind of expensive way to achieve this result. It's partially driven by the fact that we've emptied out our chaff in this area to be a part of that army that we're hoping to go threaten that other throne with. So not a great result, but not a terrible result. We'll take it. It does make sure that our throne is no longer under threat. So here we have another Almish thug, and this could be a problem because I think this is on top of one of the thrones that we're planning on magic phasing, maybe. But yeah, this might not actually work out for this Iron Angel. We'll see. They do have a lot of kit, but barbarians are pretty dangerous. Yeah, that lack of regeneration. Yeah. So I'm not even sure if it was running the exact same kit. Let's just take a quick look. But yeah, I do think this is a case. I mean, it's hard to say whether the regeneration would be enough. Yeah, so they're going for like a very offensive build, right? They have 2 square clearing attacks with Boots of Quickness. So 2 attacks that are AoE combined with quickness. Yeah, pretty killy thug. As well as an attack ring, which isn't as necessary, when you're kind of relying on the AoE attacks, but it's not the end of the world. And the Amulet of Anti-Magic is definitely relevant against the mannequins because you can ignore their attacks if you survive a magic resistance check. So yeah, not the worst kit, but again, I really think that ring regeneration would not go amiss in this case, though, barbarians are pretty dangerous. And yeah, also kind of highlights, a lot of people do not like these Iron Angels. They're fairly expensive for what you get, and they're not mages. So any raider that's not a mage that you're investing really heavily in, it's suspicious. So a questionable use of your resources, definitely. But they are pretty thematic, cool units. So I certainly don't begrudge Ulm, utilizing them a little bit. And then we have, I'm not sure what this is actually. I mean, it's an army from Eru. It's looking pretty dangerous. Is this? No, this is one of our provinces. I was thinking maybe this is a breakout from that fort that we locked down. So this might be like elements from that army that we saw that's quite near the Agarthan throne, or it might be elements from that army that we defeated that had all the Great Eagles. Regardless of what it is, it's looking fairly scary. and is definitely going to take out our one province defense. Yeah, we're definitely a lot more on the defensive this turn. And mostly, we're not defending super well, so we lose another province. We do need to keep an eye on that. We have a lot of territory, so right now, the game for us has become a little less about taking more territory and more about really trying to set up the throne win. But we don't want to get rolled back too far. So, we do need to keep an eye on that. And let's see if this runs into, nope. So we did have a few, defenses set up that we were hoping that, Asphodel would run into, but they successfully found a province that we weren't defending. So they're, doing a good job of that. No surprise there. This is an area that, we're a little light in terms of resources. I think this does run into, yep, okay, so we did manage to set up a defense here. Just a paladin and a diseased paladin. It's a leper squad. So with, some province defense, I do think that this is going to work out for us, because centaur are pretty scary, but this is enough PD, and, even leper knights are pretty scary. So yeah, I think we're going to be able to chop our way through. This was the group that we tried to mind hunt, so it's nice to see that we managed to get it in the end anyway. So that one works out for us pretty well. We'll continue to move our leper squad around to try to catch, some of the other raiders that are left. Oops. Let's see. This is a flagrant attack, but there's actually one from Shiniyama first. So yeah, they still have some Bakemono left. And yeah, we did not bother to invest in province defense. This is a bit on the sad side, because this is actually a pretty good PD type. So if we'd PD dumped here, not that, these guys are stealthy. We had no way of knowing where they would hit or that they even existed. But still, this is a place perhaps that we should have just invested some PD in, just in general. And of course, if Shiniyama has any gold left, there probably will be more PD investment here than what we put in. But yeah, we'll send someone to recapture that at some point. Ooh, the flagrant pretender. Yeah, you can never know what is the AI. They have this doom stack and they're like, we're just gonna send out only the pretender. We have no defense here, so yeah, obviously the bronze Colossus is gonna be able to come away with it. This fellow's been through the ringer, but he has at least a couple of artifacts. He's got a lot of kit. He's got an extra arm, which he has a dwarven hammer in. So yeah, nice one, AI. And then he's also an assassin, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, he's a seducer. Not really sure how that one works out, but there's no accounting for taste, and he's definitely going to come away with this province. So, not the worst result from AI Falegra. It looks like that's the only attack that they made for reasons that only the AI knows. And then we take control of a province. This looks like one that Ariu had taken, and then we take control of another province, probably also one from Ariu. They definitely have not been bothering to leave province defense in some places. We also have a raid against Ariu. This is... Oh, no, this is our army. We're moving into a Well of Pestilence province because, it's just that point in the game. Everybody's a leper anyway. Well of Pestilence, it's fine. So Ariu left no defense, so we should be able to take that with no losses. Yeah, always nice to see that. Looks like our scout, gets pushed off from on top of Ermor. This is not that surprising, though it does give us somewhat of a view of what the defense is. Yeah, just a bunch of these dog fellows. And probably going to be continuing to summon these every turn. We don't really strictly need to take Ermor, but a bunch more death gems would be nice. So, it is on the docket eventually, assuming that the storm goes well in Tianqi. We witness a raid of Asphodel's against Ulm. I'm assuming it's a raid. This is not really looking so much like a raid. So yeah, this is probably a sieging force for Ulm. I know that there was at least one fort from Asphodel that had been cracked by Ulmish forces. It's not a whole lot here really from Ulm, a decent amount of siege strength, but otherwise just a couple of mages, a mound fiend, which is pretty expensive. I think they're 26 death gems, somewhere around there. But otherwise, kind of mostly garbage. And I think Asphodel is going to have no problem. Here comes Howl. I imagine most of these spells are from Asphodel. This looks like a real army from Asphodel. Fatigue play as well. Though the fatigue play may be actually coming from Ulm. Nope, Panic Apostate. That's definitely Asphodel. So fatigue play not so useful against this Ulmish army, but also not really required. Kind of an odd force from Ulm, really. I don't know. Maybe they were. Maybe they thought they had other blocking forces in place, because this is a decent amount of siege strength, so kind of useful in terms of cracking walls, but not really like a real army that's going to be able to beat like any kind of commitment. And Asphodel definitely still has forces available to commit. So that one does not work out for Ulm, and Asphodel continues to hold their fortifications for the most part. We managed to take one fort off of them right on our border, and I think Man has taken one fort. But we really haven't made a ton of progress. Like, none of us, I feel like, have made a ton of progress against Asphodel's infrastructure. On our side, this is partially by design. Emphasis on partially. We've definitely had our failures. Yes, this is just a paladin that we're trying to get rid of. So Aryu's going to help us out here. This fellow, has been diseased and was just pretty far away, like from any lab or anything useful that he could be doing. But we are paying him, so he's going out in a blaze of glory. Let's see, what one paladin can do. Not that much. In his defense, he was diseased and old and unkitted, but yeah, paladins are like okay thugs as far as humans go, but they're not that impressive. So, and they are pretty pricey. And then here we have the storm against Tianqi. This is going to be pretty dangerous. Yeah, there's Aerofend, very nice. And then we have a few, luckily only a few, one maybe actually, these ice drakes, which is pretty good news. Because we don't really have any frost resistance spells going up, though we do have cold resistance on the Bless. I think Fog Warriors, all that kind of stuff, really depends on how much Skelly spam there's going to be, and it looks like a little bit, but not that much. A lot of water elementals, which is kind of interesting. But it looks like no protection buffs managed to go off, at least army-wide protection buffs. Now, of course, they cast Gifts from Heaven. There's going to be some friendly fire. We're definitely going to take some losses here, but overall this storm is going to work out pretty well for us. I kind of figured that, if one of our armies was able to take Shiniyama, then most likely, right, another one of our armies was going to be able to take Tianqi, because Tianqi is unlikely to have more investment in its defense than Shiniyama's own capital, and it does look like that's going to be the case. As long as we can... Okay, no, it looks like that Sea King actually retreated, so that's nice. This one does work out for us. We do take some losses. Haven't really seen too much evidence of replay bugs in this one, so hopefully, we capture the fortress. Looks like we do burn out the communion, so, that's a little unfortunate, but not the end of the world. And we lose a little bit of chaff, but this army is pretty much good to go. We also find some gear, which is nice. Some of this gear is definitely our own. But this is probably the last major force that Shiniyama has. We've seen that they've done some summoning in Ermor's old capital, but there's probably not all that much there. Of course, old age, and we're getting struck by lightning. We do lose a witch hunter to one of these. That hurts a little bit, but overall, again, not too relevant. And, Burden of Time, a little worse for us, but, at least none of our commanders die this turn, though probably there's quite a few more diseased fellows, but that just means more free raiders for us. Then we have some unexpected events. Temperatures drop dramatically, some murdering winter attempts. We can counter this somewhat, although, and especially since we have our super combatant there, we may just leave him in place for a turn and, just see how many water gems Asphodel has to waste on this. And of course, now we're going to be threatening that other fort, and I suspect that other fort doesn't have too much in it, so we'll probably use our army to, hopefully it cracks at this turn, we'll take a look. But we'll hopefully use our army to capture that other fort, which is a lot less important, but, the fewer forts that Asphodel has, the better. And then let's see, we have a couple legitimate unexpected events. There's Old Man in Green. I think we can get a better Nature Mage from this, but probably not worth pursuing at this point. Lose some province income somewhere. Again, bureaucracy. We are Marignon, so this is expected. We gain some fire gems. That's nice. And then we lose... we lose an artifact, it looks like. So this is interesting. I thought that golems would not get attacked by horrors, but this guy definitely did get attacked by horrors. This might be a particular property of this item specifically. I mean, obviously it has the normal tainted, right? So, our golem is horror marked, but normally I believe it is mindless units are of no interest to horrors. It looks like this also drives them insane, which I missed. This is definitely a pretty rough item. We probably could have gotten around this just by giving this guy a Ring of Returning, but like I said, I just wasn't expecting him to get attacked by horrors. If I recall, I do vaguely recall some discussion about there's like a few items that work a little bit differently, items that basically get around the normal rules of horror attacks, and it looks like probably this is one of the ones. Wow, we actually almost came away with this. So it's a little sad that, we're going to lose this guy. We, of course, already know the result. I was thinking this was just somebody one of our lantern holders getting eaten. So yeah, that's good to know. I haven't ever used that artifact before. Sad to be losing it, but not the end of the world. We find a ton of scouts. So yeah, we did some patrolling in Shiniyama. The Flagrant Scout's not really too relevant. Yeah, Shiniyama Scout's not super relevant. Happy to get rid of Asphodel Scouts, though, definitely. This is in a different location. In fact, yeah, this is also in a different location. So we just got scouts kind of all over the place. And then I think we lose... we actually get rid of a raiding force from Shiniyama. That's more relevant and nice. So happy to be getting rid of that. And then one of our friars gets patrolled out by Asphodel somewhere. We are in a number of places trying to preach up our dominion. Asphodel's probably caught on to this fact, or maybe just doing their normal patrolling. Patrol out another Yissian scout on top of Miklin. So, Yiss is at least still interested in us, but we've talked about the Yiss situation all the time. Another Shiniyaman scout. And then the fort status, so we've breached Xibalba. Our lepers have breached one of Shiniyama's forts. Of course, Nabaa is being repaired because we just have a super combatant on top of there. Unfortunately, we did not get the one-turn crack on top of this fort. That's a little bit sad. It also maybe indicates that this fort is not as empty as I thought. We'll probably, get our spying item on there, do a little bit of scrying. We'll probably hang out there, maybe even cast the heat spell on that. Would we rather take Nabaa? Sure. But we need to take our time here. I would really like to avoid having to use all the forces that we're building up in Bandar against Asphodel, because, then that would leave us open to Yiss. So we don't actually have really in an emergency we can use them, but other than that army that we have, running around that was on top of Nabaa, we don't actually have any other forces in the area. And of course, Asphodel is extremely dangerous. So in a lot of ways, we don't want to press this too hard, because it's like what we have to gain versus what we have to lose is not in balance. So we'll be happy, to take a lesser fort, which hopefully be able to pull off. And then, of course, we just have a scout sitting on top of one of Aryu's forts. Plenty of patrolling. Paladin dies of disease. A witch hunter dies of disease. And I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Of course, I've made several errors, but we still have a pretty good chance, I feel like, of pulling off our throne rush. I've talked a lot about how, we have a scout here and they'll let us know if there's a fort under construction. And I've also talked a lot about how our plan is to magic phase in a fort. Obviously, our opponents can also magic phase in forts. I haven't really worried about it too much. I think Agartha's just a little too low on resources. And, Asphodel, for whatever reason, isn't interested. Doesn't think that a throne victory is likely. Perhaps just wants to be released from this game. Ulm, on the other hand, I feel like is still more invested. They also have probably more earth income. They also have, deep blood, deep well, which gives them a lot of earth gems. So, magic phasing in a fort using the earth spell, definitely possible for them. And this river is frozen, and this army is probably headed for this throne province. They are interested in forts as well, and this is some siege strength, so they may actually jump on top of this fort, which would be great. But worst case scenario, they attack with this onto this province, and then they magic phase a fort in. We're kind of one turn away, right? Like next turn we'll be one turn away from where we want to be. We're hoping to sneak our squad into the province so they can attack in conjunction with some magic phase attacks. But if Ulm gets there first, I think the risk of them magic phasing in a fort is perhaps too great. So we'll take a look at what sort of magic phase attack options we have. This isn't that strong, but it's also going to be somewhat difficult for us to defeat with the magic phase attacks that we have available. So pretty concerned about this situation. Also very sad. This is a river crossing that's frozen. So, if I thought a little bit harder about this, just made a few realizations earlier. We are still doing it this turn. We have a fellow here, Breath of the Desert at this province. But the movement will happen, I think, before the temperature scales change. So it's not going to block this Almish group's movement this turn. It will at least prevent, any reinforcements from getting in. It also kind of tips our hand a little bit to Asphodel, which is part of why I hadn't been doing it. I felt like, well, it's not really going to be too relevant for our thugs attacking province defense and, whatever kind of minor forces Asphodel seems to be stationing there. I think it's just, some random free spawn coming in. So better to go, for full surprise. They start seeing events like that pop up on top of the throne province, then they're going to get suspicious. So that's maybe an argument, to not be casting at all, because it's kind of the worst of both worlds. I'm hoping that they think that it's Ulm casting it. Ulm definitely is someone that can cast that spell without too much difficulty, and obviously Ulm is very active in this region. It's a lot less important if Ulm picks up another throne. So anyway, we'll see. If we get lucky, then this will jump on top of this fort. If we get unlucky, they'll jump here, and Asphodel will throw in a huge response, and Ulm will magic phase in a fort, and we'll have kind of screwed ourselves in terms of a throne rush. So we'll see what happens there. Otherwise, also the timing on this really has to be pretty precise. Because Eriu has no shortage of siege strength in the area, and I don't think, this is a dangerous army that we have, but I'm not sure it can take all of this, especially if it gets reinforced by all of this. So, when we magic phase in a fort and magic phase in somebody to claim it, if we don't actually win the game on that turn, or maybe like one turn after that, then Eriu will be able to, crack our more or less empty fortification and just retake it. And of course, at any time, Eriu could move their forces in, to take this province, and that would more or less block our attempts to magic phase some answers in, because a couple magic phase attacks is not going to be enough to deal with all of this. And that is part of why we are marching from one well of pestilence into another well of pestilence, really purely as a diversionary measure. We might actually try to jump on top of this fort if we can lock them inside Ashdod. Eriu may feel differently. Maybe this army isn't as nasty as it looks. It looks pretty nasty. So my expectation is that they would try to patrol and that we would probably lose that battle. But if they choose to hide inside the fort, if we can just lock them inside, that'll give us one extra turn just in case something goes wrong, with our throne rush. We will at least have the mages in place. We're teleporting some fellow. Yeah, this guy's going to teleport in, so he's going to be able to cast whatever that spell is that gets us the Archangel. And then, we do have our Earth Fellow available. So then, we'll probably just rely. We might throw in a couple other spells. We're also increasing our blood hunting just a little bit. Like we're blood hunting on top of Bandar Log with a vampire here. Because we can send Demon Locusts. That's a remote attack spell that we might be able to pull off. We do need some blood boosters for that. So we're also forging at least one of those. Yeah, right here. So I'm not sure how many casts that we'll be able to get off. I think at least one. It is fairly expensive, and our blood hunting is not great. But ideally, we would be able to get 2 of those off. I do think we're moving or have already moved a vampire in position. Yeah, I think it's this vampire or maybe this vampire. I think they're both headed out in opposite directions to be able to remote cast that spell. So anyway, we're going to be throwing a bunch of garbage at these hopefully largely empty provinces, and then we have our other Archangel ready to go. They can actually make this in one move. Their movement is pretty crazy. There's certainly an argument to move them out this turn, and really I probably should have. I don't know, it makes me nervous to have him out there. There's a lot of investment in this fellow, so just having him sit loose out in the wind with no support is a little concerning. We are sending in our fellow here that is going to be going after the Watchers. So fingers crossed. I have done a little bit of testing to come up with this kit in the script. It works sometimes, but soul slays do get thrown out. So if the rolls go against us, we may actually fail there, and that'll realistically have to delay this rush. And we're just gonna have to hope that no fort gets magic phased on top of here. If this all collapses, I think our position is still good. I think we will win. Really more just like a politeness. I think this is the fastest way to win if we can make it work. And definitely the interest in this game I think is waning. So I would like to close it out, as quick as possible. If we can't close it out with this rush, then I don't want to say back to the drawing board, but we'll probably need to bring up a lot more reinforcements to try to deal with Eriu's stack. There is the outside possibility. There's another throne over here. It's been a little while since we've scouted it. So, maybe we just go a different direction, through Ulm, and kind of ignore this army if we can hold it in place with some other stuff and then head somewhere else. So of course, we've been pretty laser focused on the throne combination that we've been looking at, but there are other thrones out there. So, if this falls through, the other thing we could do, end our non-aggression pact with Man. This is a relatively close throne. The last time we looked, it was very empty. Obviously, Man has been throwing a lot of resources into Asphodel. But they've also been a really good ally, so, I'd kind of hate to close out the game that way. But on the other hand, if it's going to be that or like another, 15 or 20 turns, I think, might actually be more polite to just go after that throne. Otherwise, like a variety of, minor raids, just trying to keep Asphodel back, a few guys hanging out and patrolling. We're going to continue to try to siege down this fortification. We're going to leave our super combatant on here, which is a little risky because, we're giving Asphodel time to come up with the answers and move answers in. Asphodel continues to, burn down all their territory. So clearly they think that they're going to get rolled back here and they want to make sure that we're only taking ruins. But this is really more just about preventing Asphodel from being powerful enough to cast like the really nasty spells that are going to ruin the game for us. Picking up any territory from them is kind of just more of a bonus. We are going to try to storm here with our leper squad, so we'll see how that goes. There is definitely some stuff in here, and Shiniyama has been doing a decent job setting up defenses. I think they've also said good game in the game chat, so probably their investment is pretty low at this point. Which is understandable. We have a couple other raids just clearing out the last of their territory, attacking some of Aryu's territory that used to be Agartha's. We still haven't found that Agarthan stack. I feel like it's possible that it has died. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any other thrones. Yeah, there's no other thrones around here. Jotunheim has been set to AI, so we might use some of our forces to clean out some of the AI, but we don't want to get too far away from this fortification and this throne because we don't want to protect it. We are sending this army out to jump on top of Ermor. This is a lot of death gems, so it'd be nice to pick that up. Like again, we're very focused on trying to get the rush in, but if the rush fails, and it very well might, because I've never done it before, planning hasn't gone brilliantly. We do want to have some backup plans. We are storming for Xibalba as well, and then of course, we're still, keeping a lot of forces in place, continuing to recruit along the Yis border. At this point, I feel like Yis has decided that they're not going to be able to win the game, in the amount of time that they have left. Throne wise, I think it's going to be very difficult for them. There's only one underwater throne, which they do hold, but they would need to take a lot of territory and a lot of thrones, and we are sort of running out of turns. So the player may just be looking at the situation and thinking I want to invest my effort in other games where I can actually win. Otherwise, I'm not really sure why they haven't attacked me. So potentially, in a few turns, especially if the throne rush fails, we'll probably gateway out a good chunk of this. We might actually make some lying items, some items that are going to lie about our army size, slap them on some commanders, and then teleport out a good chunk of our units. We do still want to leave some behind. But at this point, we're large enough. It's probably not that hard of a sell. We're also doing a lot of patrolling, actually, so I'm not even sure how valuable that is, because they can't really even tell what's in this fort. In theory they could get some scouts on periodically, but we have been patrolling out quite a few scouts recently. Anyway, if the throne rush fails, we'll definitely want to activate these forces, in the name of speeding this game up. Otherwise, more or less, similar stuff that we've been doing, bringing in the occasional lich. We're doing a little less blood stuff this turn because we do want to have blood slaves available for those demon locusts. We are really trying to beef up our defenses on this throne fortification because Ulm has a pretty large stack here, and particularly if we try to throne rush and fail, that'll let them know that hey, I should probably start taking thrones from Marignon right away. We also have Phalegra's Pretender here, AI Phalegra now. We don't really have an answer for him yet. Haven't really developed an answer. Hopefully this fellow who's going to be taking this throne for us, who has a Smasher, which is good against inanimates and is kind of a scary super combatant in his own right. If he survives, that's a decent answer to Suns Out, Buns Out. But we'll see where they go. The AI is very unpredictable. It's entirely possible that they start to attack Ulm. Though, like I said, the thrones are kind of a magnet for the AI. Research-wise, going for Thaumaturgy 8. Unfortunately, it looks like I didn't actually set another research priority. So we'll get a little conjuration research in. We probably actually want to go for Thaumaturgy 9, being able to astral travel, which we do have mages that can do, not a ton. But, we have plenty of astral, we have good astral income. We spend it at a prodigious rate, but it wouldn't take us too many turns to save up for an astral travel, and being able to drop a major army like on top of a throne is probably a good backup play. So next turn we'll probably slot Thaumaturgy 9 into the research. So yeah, I'm sure there's a few things that I'm forgetting, but I think that more or less covers turn 76.